Hello, and welcome back to the #1 travel guide of the Cylinder. And today, we are going to investigate a strange sinkhole anomaly that was discovered in the center of the Sweltering Desert. After hours of hiking through the desert, we finally began to see the anomaly. It appeared to be an extremely enlarged sinkhole, which were normally caused by large amounts of groundwater pooling into one area, causing a large air bubble to be formed. It will eventually erode away the sandstone holding up the sand of the desert. But normally, an event like this would only cause minor earthquakes. In this case, it seems to have created a massive hole going all the way down to whatever cave or structure caused it to exist. You began to draw closer, but as you did, the sand swept you off your feet, and you fell into the pit. After what felt like days of being unconscious, you woke up. You opened your eyes and were met with an entirely alien environment that was filled with dim, dark blue light. Suddenly, scuttling out of the darkness towards you, you spotted a large, blind invertebrate. It was a barrel crab. Barrel crabs are surprisingly very closely related to horseshoe crabs of the ocean. However, they went through extreme evolution to adapt to their new wet cave environment. Now, you may be wondering how ocean creatures ended up in the Sweltering Desert, in the cave. Well, thousands of years ago, when the Sweltering Desert was originally a large, shallow inland sea, there were thousands of different species of marine life that lived in that ocean. But, as the water began to recede and turned back into the ice in the north, some of the life did not follow the water. In fact, quite a lot of it retreated into deep caves that have now been swallowed by the sand of time. Barrel crabs are large, generalist scavengers that use their two front claws to sense their dark environment, and their mouth has evolved into a large trap that, once it has bitten down on something, will never let go. Barrel crabs will also often use sinkholes just like this to hunt, as they know that fresh food will often come down the new entrances. Just like you. However, luckily for you, they cannot move very fast, and you're able to get out of there before more of them showed up. As you scrambled away, you began to notice just how large this cave truly was. Further away, out of the corner of your eye, you noticed a small barrel crab get ambushed and then eaten by something that was hiding inside of a large pool of water. It was a deep worm, likely an enlarged species of bobbit worm native to the oceans. And both creatures seemed to share very similar lion-weight predator lifestyles. However, instead of hiding in large areas of sand, like their cousins, these deep worms opted for hunting in large pools of water peppered throughout the cave floor. You continued stumbling through the darkness, and eventually made your way down into a shallow pool of water, where you noticed a strangely ribcage-shaped object slightly submerged in the water. It appeared to be the remains of a great sand tunneler. The great sand tunneler is an almost colossal-sized subterranean species of dragon, native to the Sweltering Desert, very deep down in the sand, where every day they bore through huge amounts of sand, and use this extremely biodiverse cave system essentially as an oasis for them to more easily find food and water. This individual that you found seemingly must have died from going too far into the cave system and not having an easy way out. And one of the things you noticed about it is that around its bones there were these strange, large clams that were seemingly feeding off of it. They were glow clams. Glow clams are a species of filter-feeding clam that eat bioluminescent microorganisms that live in the dense glowing fog, usually down near where water is. However, they are also known to use these long, fleshy tendrils, almost like roots, to zap up nutrients from the surrounding environment, as well as the fog. Further away in the water, you noticed another glowing creature. It was a wandering snail, a species of semi-aquatic snail that spends most of its life mostly submerged inside of water, and using a very long appendage to filter feed through the glowing bacteria located in the fog, the very same fog that the glow clams eat. However, this snail is also able to hunt larger game. With a modified tooth, they are able to use almost like a grappling hook that is able to launch out of their mouth and drill things back in, allowing them to eat much larger prey. Kept walking, and eventually made it to an area with the cave walls beginning to constrict inward, and there are more stalactites in the ceiling. Then suddenly, you saw a medium-sized dark shape rise out of the water and clamber onto the land. It was a lurker, a species of fairly large fish that has evolved primitive lungs, as well as the ability to clamber around on land in a similar fashion to seals. These fish use their large, almost human-shaped teeth to shear through the hard exoskeletons of invertebrates, such as glow clams and even wandering snails. Now, you may be wondering why these fish seem to have glow lures on their forehead, seeing as everything down here just seems to not possess eyes. And you also might have noticed those spines in the back of their head, just behind their lure. Well, those spines are actually primitive sensory organs that they can use to sense light and dark in their environment. Well, they actually use that lure to find mates, in a very similar fashion to fireflies. Suddenly, out of the darkness, a long, wet tentacle grasped onto the lurker. It was the dreaded Squelch. The Squelch is a large, blind-derived octopus that excretes so much oil and grease from its body constantly that when it feeds, it creates a horrible, wet noise. Hence the Squelch. The Squelch is a lion-weight predator that uses the darkness of the outskirts of the cave to its advantage, waiting for its prey to stray a little too far from the bioluminescent glow. However, the Squelch doesn't just rely on luck to procure its prey. It will also send out small electromagnetic pulses into the water. They greatly mimic the heartbeat of some prey animals in the caves, causing other predatory animals to be drawn to it, and they will then die swiftly after. But, unfortunately, you did not live to tell the tale, as you were suffocated under a pile of writhing black tentacles. And that now brings us to the end of this chapter of the Survival Guide.